The qualifications in Bahrain have ended, and we have to thank this man here who saved Ferrari today, third in qualifying with Leclerc, because otherwise the result of Ferrari was not so positive, seeing also the performances of Hamilton. In this video, we'll discuss the qualifications, analyze Piastri's pole position lap, and compare it to Ferrari's performance. And McLaren, how Ferrari has also evolved in the FP3 and how the updates on the red one are also performing. We also have to comment, obviously, on Ocon's accident. We are going to comment on Verstappen's difficulties that he has indeed accused. I agree that Verstappen is one of the disappointed of the day. Surely together also with Lando Norris. Guys, Norris had a good qualification until Q2. In Q3, he faded. You can't put on a performance like that with a McLaren. It's unacceptable despite the pressure.
But to get there,
even behind Gasly is something unacceptable.
Now let's see
all the detail. First, of course, I remind you to leave a like, to subscribe, activate notifications so you don't miss any video on the channel. Please, it's very important to support me in the work I do. Having said that, let's immediately look at the final classification of qualifications before telemetry. In this case, we have Piastri, Russell, and Leclerc. These are the top three, so three different cars also in the top three, and we will compare them also with telemetry, with Piastri, who made the pole position in 1.2, 9.8, and we saw a very strong Piastri throughout the weekend, so great pole on his part, and among other things, the internal fight in McLaren is heating up because now Norris has made a mistake and will start behind tomorrow. He will have to recover. However, Piastri is the favorite to win tomorrow's race, and he will almost certainly finish first. We will see how the race unfolds.
And yes.
And it creates this situation of internal conflict within McLaren. So be careful because Andrea Stella will have to try to manage both of his drivers because McLaren, as we saw today, seems to be superior. But looking at the standings, again, we see that Piastri is detached from Russell. Then behind second, Russell is detached from Piastri by 168 thousandths, so really little. Even though we saw huge gaps both in Q1 and in Q2, then in Q3, the situation has somewhat stabilized and the margins have been contained. Russell did a great qualifying too, congratulations, because anyway, being there second is a big deal, and Russell, since the beginning of the season in qualifying, is doing very well, often being the first opponent of the McLarens. Leclerc is third. Once again, I want to emphasize, Charles did a great lap and credit must be given to Charles, who is carrying forward Ferrari. And he also said it, he changed his driving style. Now he can stop the single-seater better and therefore he can push it more to the limit. And this, since it has affected a lot with new tire in managing both the temperatures from the beginning to the end of the lap, but especially in trying to get just to the apex, not having that chronic understeer that instead Hamilton accuses. Hamilton, in fact, Leclerc then said it, even after in the post-qualifying interview, he said, hey, updates have helped, even if they will help more in the next races where it will be necessary to have more dynamic load, for example, in Jeddah. And so, yes, they have helped in part, but Bahrain is not the best track to see this. However, there is a lot, in my opinion, of Charles in this third position, and it must be noted, we will also see it later with telemetry. I want to comment. Then first of all, we must also talk about Max, because Max had a bit of problems. In fact, honestly, seeing him even seventh behind, beyond Norris, behind Gasly, is something of quite embarrassing for Verstappen, who, however, is used to having a great race in Japan, bringing home the pole and the victory. And here in Bahrain, we saw him struggling. He can't stop his Red Bull. He struggles with the brake balance and with the front brakes especially, and he can't stop the car. This is Max's main problem, and it's a problem with tire temperatures, not so much obviously with consumption, and we'll see why anyway. Beyond this, Red Bull also suffers from higher tire consumption compared to others. So for tomorrow's race, it will be very difficult for Verstappen to even try to make a comeback and start next to Norris. So let's get the popcorn ready because it will be fun at the start. Norris 6th and Verstappen 7th. I want to discuss with you, though, a fairly unusual situation because we saw what happened with the Hülkenberg case where they then took away his lap 45 minutes after the end of the session, and this also prevented Alex Albon from possibly moving on to Q2 and then Q3, and this is a shame because the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile should not act in this way. The stewards should be much faster in eliminating invalid laps and not in keeping them valid. and then cancel them after so much time, especially because the session goes on and the drivers are then excluded, and a chance to Albon should have been given. In this case, if Hülkenberg had the lap, let's say, to eliminate having a lap in which one is eliminated after 45 minutes is embarrassing. It should not happen in any sport. Such a decision taken so long after is like, if a referee gives you a yellow card after the second half, that is after 45 minutes, it is something that is neither in heaven nor on earth, in my opinion. So this thing here is quite unusual and will have to be resolved. I want to start first of all by analyzing Ocon's accident, and then let's look at Piastri's lap together. Let's analyze it, and let's also look at the telemetry, where Leclerc made the difference for that third position. Next, let's compare the team's performances, but first Ocon's severe accident. Now let's move forward. Turn 1, okay. He exits well. Moving on here, he takes the curb too much. Even before there is a correction, here he already goes a bit too wide in my opinion. In fact, he then loses the rear and the curb ruins everything. He loses control of the single-seater and goes against the barriers, not even that hard, but this then caused the red flag that we saw. And I want to show you now the lap of Piastri, because you can see that the McLaren is really on a rail. It's something amazing. You can also see it from the onboard itself. And the most interesting part, in my opinion, of Piastri's lap, now I'll show you a bit of turn 1, 2, 3, that anyway, turn 1, 2 also there. The McLaren makes the difference, especially compared to Ferrari that struggles to stop the car. Instead, look at how precise McLaren is and how it manages not to make micro corrections. It manages to be very fluid in driving and have a great acceleration. And here Piastri is giving a lot of gas. That is much more gas compared to Leclerc, for example, in his lap. And the McLaren does not make those micro corrections that Ferrari does. It remains very stable even on the curves. It does not lose grip. Let's move on. Here we also see Piastri very precise. He makes a small correction halfway, but really the car is fluid. It reacts to his steering movement and does not slide, and this is fundamental. But here the snake, this is the most important part. This is where McLaren makes the difference over everyone else. Look here, the change of direction inside the snake is immediate. It's immediate. It's something absurd, this. I mean, look how much load McLaren can develop and how much lateral grip it has to maintain that speed in the snake, not lose grip, but rather be super stable. Even here in braking on entry, it manages to get just to the point of rope. The rotation is there, guys. It's not missing in McLaren. And this is certainly a difference between McLaren and Ferrari. We also see here braking, it manages to get just to the point of rope. Let's move on though. That even here is a part where McLaren makes a lot of difference towards the last sector. Put here also the rotation. The angle of rotation is not so high compared to other teams that find themselves having more angle of rotation in this part of the circuit. And moving forward, we also see here how he manages to accompany his McLaren. In this case, he misses a bit the point of rope, but still manages to make it rotate well on exit. The McLaren rotates well, and this is a bit of a difference with Ferrari compared to the lap we also analyzed yesterday of Ferrari itself. Let's now briefly see a correction by Leclerc, who first of all made a small correction that a bit caused him a bit of trouble. Let's see together. We study the audio. This is a correction that done by Leclerc during the qualifiers. Let's see here the exit from the last curve. You have lost something here. And then I want to show you the telemetry now. Let's make the comparison between Piastri. I put Piastri, Leclerc, Russell and Verstappen on the right. Let's see that. Arriving at the braking of curve 1. McLaren is the one with the lowest top speed, 313 km/h against Russell's 319, 320 of Leclerc and 320 of Verstappen. So Ferrari very good at top speed. The problem comes here. Let's zoom in. Let's see here where curve 1 and 2 came out. You see that Ferrari tries to come out strong. At the beginning it succeeds, but then loses a lot. Here, look here. This is the point where McLaren makes more difference, and compared to the others, especially look compared to Ferrari. In this case, Leclerc has lost a lot on exit, and look at the difference in km per hour. It goes from 93.8 miles per hour of Leclerc against the 162 of Piastri, so 6.83 miles per hour difference. We go on 192, 184. Then Ferrari recovers a bit. However, the difference is clear in terms of km per hour. In fact, Leclerc goes to gain a bit at the beginning, then he goes to lose my braking, he goes to regain here in the first part of acceleration, and then he goes to lose again Leclerc. Look how much he loses. Now zoom out a bit, look how much Leclerc loses compared to Mercedes, compared to Russell, and also compared to Verstappen. Given that the V-strap is a bit less, but still compared to the others, it loses a lot. The Mercedes is very strong in the first sector. And we also see here, we get to curve 4, we see how Ferrari manages to enter quite strongly. Mercedes and McLaren remain superior. It handles corners better than V-strap due to better braking feel. Ferrari excels mid-corner, and then it loses again on exit. It can't maintain that rotation. This is exactly where the rotation of McLaren happens. At this point on the track, here. Right towards the exit of the apex point. Yes. Going back together, let's look at turn 4. We see how, in this case, both Mercedes and McLaren make a difference. Especially, McLaren manages to have good speed of travel. Mercedes has it a little less. However, both have good traction, a good rotation though. The car, while McLaren struggles a lot. Verstappen comes out much stronger, but why has he lost so much on entry? But we arrive to the most important point. The snake here is where McLaren makes the difference. I also showed it in Piastri's previous lap. However, Ferrari seems to have a harder time in managing the snake, even compared to Mercedes. It's a bit in line with Red Bull in this case. Ferrari has more difficulty and lacks precision. A bit more grumpy, a bit more nervous. Let's move on to the curve. Okay, so let's move on now, after. We see the snake here. Verstappen tries to recover a bit, but then loses on entry and recovers a bit on exit. And looking at the gaps after the snake, you see that Ferrari has also lost a lot in turn 4. Loses a bit in the snake, loses a bit in the turn after the snake. And moving forward, we see that Leclerc tries to recover. But now the gap is too wide indeed at the snake, because from here on out, 257 thousandths difference. The gap between Leclerc and Piastri narrows to just 337, with Leclerc losing very little in the end. He loses about 80 thousandths later during the lap, and 2/3 of the track are missing, so Leclerc struggles a bit more there. In the fast corners, Leclerc manages to go quite strong, and manages to be a bit similar to McLaren, even though McLaren still makes the difference. There too, it is clearly seen that Verstappen struggles a lot in braking. You see that he always brakes earlier compared to the opponents to come out stronger. But a problem with the brake balance just for the Dutchman. Let's move on. Let's do the comparison between Leclerc and Hamilton. 1.31 of Leclerc, 1.37 of Hamilton. Very in difficulty. And where did Hamilton struggle? At the snake, you can clearly see the difference in speed between Leclerc and the other driver. Is about 5 miles per hour between the two in the course of the snake. And then after, in the fast corners towards the last sector, we see that Hamilton really loses a lot, about 4.35 miles per hour, even a bit more, maybe 12 in this case. That is really a lot. 3.72 miles per hour from 6 to 7.45 miles per hour in the course of the fast curve, symptom that he lost something, also feeling does not have grip then in the second part of the circuit. He can't keep the tires in the right temperature window, while Leclerc knows something more than Hamilton about the setup he has experimented, and it works. Hamilton still needs to understand Leclerc, this SF25, and you can also see from the gaps, look from the snaking, then Hamilton really loses a lot and continues to lose during the lap. The first sector is very good. The first sector up to curve 4 is excellent. They are both very much in line. From curve 4 onwards, Leclerc waves goodbye to Hamilton. Let's move on. Let's also see Piastri. Unlike Norris, well, we see anyway, Norris arrives with a higher top speed compared to Piastri, so he has less load if we want and more efficient. But Norris loses a lot at the snake and also coming out of curve 1, as we saw that he was sliding at the snake, he was losing. He lost time not only in the first sector, but also slightly throughout the entire track, including the second sector. He loses and also lost a little bit in the third sector. This fast curve, though, if we then see from here on, he doesn't lose. Let's say in the first part of the circuit, he loses quite a bit in every sector. In short, a Norris under pressure is evident, and also the words perhaps of Max said in Japan, with that car you wouldn't have even seen me talking from McLaren. In my opinion, a bit now bounce in Norris's head, who feels under pressure because it's really the first time he's been in the fight for the World Championship since the start of the season. Until last season, he found himself in the fight for the World Championship, but in the second part, in a very advanced way, even if we want, he almost found himself there. Instead, in this case, he has to face not only Verstappen, but perhaps above all, he should think about Piastri, who is his real opponent for the World Championship. And many have said in Japan he thought about it because Norris was ahead of Piastri and did not attack Verstappen on purpose, because not on purpose, but in the sense he tried to keep the position to prevent the Australian from passing him and therefore gaining more points. But be careful now. Norris has to try to hold on, because to date Norris is really struggling in comparison with his teammate who is the same car. So in qualifying you can't struggle so much against your teammate. The gaps are close together, allowing you to quickly move from 2nd to 6th place. As it happened today, share your thoughts on the qualifications and tomorrow's race. It will be a beautiful event. I'll show you the standings again. Piastri leads Russell in 2nd, who will try to attack Piastri. Leclerc will try to attack Russell and maybe even Piastri, although a podium is already a big deal for Leclerc. Antonelli had a great qualification, finding himself close to the top teams and drivers. Russell is 2/10 off, a big deal for Antonelli. Gasly starts 5th, something amazing. He's the most valuable player of the day, don't touch him. We will also see how Norris and Verstappen behave, and we also see Hamilton's comeback starting 9th. Be careful, Tsunoda has arrived in Q3 good, but damn, 10th is not really great for him, but at least he arrived in Q3. Tell me your opinion on these qualifications. I remind you, of course, to leave a like and to subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss any video that comes out here on the channel. Every day I keep you updated on all the videos, and on all the Formula 1 themed news I leave you other related videos here. From there is everything. See you in a next video. But first, I also tell you my prediction for tomorrow's race, so I go out on a limb. I say Piastri, Leclerc, actually Piastri, Norris, Leclerc, Piastri, Norris.
Leclerc, we must
Obviously see if Norris will recover. But he has to do it with that car. I mean, he can't not recover. In my opinion, McLaren is a step.
Devastating, it will arrive.
Leclerc must try to keep the podium, which is crucial to beating the two Mercedes, despite it being a 2-on-1 battle between Mercedes and Ferrari. Hamilton has to recover from behind as well. Share your prediction in the comments.